Hi everyone, this video is going to take you through how to work out the answers to these exam style questions on proportion that I gave you. If you found them difficult, watch the video step by step and see if you can do it. So even though I'm giving you the answers, I'm also showing you how you work out the answers. And just like with the homework booklets, if you find it difficult, then what I want you to do is watch the video and then stop the video and then see if you can do the question after having watched my explanation. Now, that is completely different from just copying it down as I go, because then you're writing and watching the video at the same time, and that doesn't work. So if you found it difficult, or any particular question difficult, then just watch what I do. I'll take you through the steps, and then you can stop the video and you have a go at doing it in your book. Okay, now you can see that in all these questions I've coloured them in a certain way. The first blue bit tells you the relationship between the two letters. It's y and x here, but it might be other letters. The red bit is what you always get in this question, or these questions, where they tell you the value of y and x at the same time. And the last bit is to work out y when they tell you what x is. Or they might ask you to find out x when you know what y is. Okay, but these questions are very, very similar in format, and that's why I've coloured them in this way. And hopefully as we go through the video, you'll see that the explanations are very, very similar. So, first of all, y is directly proportional to the square of x. So you write y is proportional to x squared. That's what the square of x is. And on the next line, you simply change that to y equals kx squared. So you change this symbol to an equal, and you've got kx squared. So all we're saying is this, that if y is proportional to x squared, then the formula will be y is some number or some amount of x squared. The formula will look like that. Now we don't know what k is at the moment, we don't know what that number is, and that's the first thing we have to find out. So we've got a mark for doing this. So you've got 2 marks already just for doing this. The next stage is to use the red bit to find out what k is. So we have a situation here where we know what y is and we know what x is at the same time. And so we put these numbers into this equation. So y is 24 and x is 2. So 24 is k times 2 squared. And 2 squared is 4, so 24 is 4k. And then to work out what k is, we divide both sides by 4 and we get 6. So in this particular situation, this particular question, we've just worked out that k is 6. And so our formula now, it used to be y equals kx squared, but now it's y equals 6x squared because k is 6 in this question. So now we've got a formula that we can use to work out y if we know what x is. And we could also, with a bit of working backwards, work out what x is when we know what y is. Okay, so here is what we need to find out now. So we've done this bit and we've done this bit. Find the value of y when x is 4. So we simply put in, when x is 4, it's going to be y equals 6 times 4 squared. 4 squared is 16, and 6 times 16 is 96. So when x is 4, y is 96. Okay, so on this next question it says the cost of a circular table is directly proportional to the square of the radius. So it's the same kind of relationship as we had before, directly proportional to the square of the radius. And that means that c, whoops daisy, that means that c will be some number times r squared, just like before. K is going to be a different number this time because it's a different question and a different situation, but it will be a number nonetheless. If you think about it, it kind of makes sense. Why? Well, because the cost of a table would depend on the amount of wood. And what's going to affect the amount of wood? Well, the area of the table, because the table will get bigger, it won't get thicker, the thickness will stay the same. And it's just the area of the circular table that will tell you the amount of wood, and area is pi r squared. So it makes sense that the cost is proportional to some amount of r squared. So just doing this, just like before, just going to go backwards. Just like before, okay, y is proportional to x squared, y equals kx squared. So just like before, we've got now c is proportional to r squared because it's cost and radius, and now we write down c equals kr squared, and we're going to now have to work out what k is. This red part, it's always red, I've coloured it for you, tells us what the radius and the cost is at the same time. So we know that r is 40 and the cost is 50, and we put those numbers in here. So 50 for the cost equals k times 40 squared. 40 squared is 1600. So now we've got to work out what k is, so divide both sides by 1600 and you get either 1 out of 32 or a decimal. Personally, I think it's easier to write it as a fraction because it's more accurate and it's less writing. If you do write it as a decimal, keep it as 0.03125. Don't round it off because your answer won't be accurate anymore if you do. And because you've got to write out this long decimal, I prefer to write a fraction, but you can write either way. So your formula that used to be c equals k times r squared is now going to be c equals either r squared divided by 32, because that's what k is, or 0.03125 times r squared, because this is what k is. Alright, we've got two different ways of writing k, and we put them here. So we've got either r squared divided by 32, if we use that way, or 0.03125 r squared if we want to use it that way. It's going to get the same answer, it doesn't really matter. And then it says, what is the cost of the circular table with a radius of 60? So we just simply put 60 here, okay, and work out what the radius is going to be. Beg your pardon, the cost. So cost is radius squared, radius is 60, divided by 32. 60 squared is 3,600, divided by 32 gives you £112.50. Okay, so you've got all these marks for getting all these stages right. Question 3. The time taken, t seconds, that it takes a water heater to boil is inversely proportional to the power, p, watts of the water heater. Got a lot of writing here, but it's the same kind of approach. We've got two letters, t and p. This time it says inversely proportional to the power of the water heater. So inversely proportional means 1 over p. That's what inversely proportional means. If you think about it, it makes sense, because the more power of the water heater, the less time it's going to take to heat that water. So it's inversely proportional. As one doubles, the other one halves. You double the power, you halve the time. So same thing as before. Now change that for t equals k over p. And it's important to understand that even though we're using k each time as a letter, it's a different number depending on the question. So just like before, now we get to this point, the red section, where they give you the p and the t at the same time. So you put this where you see p, and you put this where you see t. Okay? And now you work out what k must be. So we multiply both sides by 2,000, and that gives us that k is 504,000. Pretty big number, but it doesn't matter. So our formula that used to be k divided by p is now 504,000 divided by p. Okay, because we just replaced the k we see here with the number that we've worked out. So this is our formula. So already we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 marks. Next step would be to work out how long it's going to take to boil the water when P is 800 watts. Well, it's going to take more time because it's not as powerful as it was here. Okay, so when P is 800 watts, the time is going to be 504,000 divided by P, so divided by 800, and that gives us 630 seconds, which is 10.5 minutes, or 10 minutes and 30 seconds. And once again, you've got these marks for all these steps here. Question 4. H varies directly to the cube of C. Cube means C cubed. So, once again, here's the relationship. Here's when we know what H and C are at the same time, so we're going to work out what the K number is, and then there's some things to work out. So, first of all, H is proportional, or varies directly, to C cubed. That's what that means. Have a mark. Next step, write it again, but write an equal sign and put a k there. So basically we're just saying if h is proportional to c cubed, it just means that h is going to be some amount of c cubed. And once again, we have to use this to find out what the k is. So, just like before, put in the numbers. H is 40 and k is 2. And don't forget it's 2 cubed. 2 cubed isn't 6, it's 8. 2 times 2 times 2. So 40 is 8k. Divide both sides by 8 and you get that k is 5. So our formula here, and we said it was some amount of c cubed, well, we found out what that amount is. It's 5. So our formula is h equals 5c cubed. And now we're going to use that formula to work out these things here. Work out h when c is 5. So put 5 here to work out what h is. When c is 5, h will be 5 times 5 cubed, which is 5 times 125, which is 625. Have a mark. When h is 5,000, we've got to find out what cubed times 5 makes 5,000. Okay, we'll divide both sides by 5, and you get c cubed is 1,000. This bit must be 1,000 if 5 times it makes 5,000. So c cubed is 1,000. What would you cube to make 1,000? If you're not sure, do the opposite thing, do the inverse, and cube root 1,000, and you get 10. So the answer is 10. Question 5. The force F in newtons exerted by a magnet on a metal object is inversely proportional to the square of the distance d centimeters. When d is 2, F is 50 newtons. Express F in terms of d. Find the force when the distance between the magnet and metal object is 10. Find the distance between the magnet and the metal object when the force is 8 newtons. And explain what happens to F when d is halved. Okay. So, first step, write out the relationship, the blue bit. F is inversely proportional to the square of the distance. So distance squared, that's the square of the distance. And it says inversely proportional, and inversely means 1 over. So F is proportional to 1 over d squared. Inversely proportional to d squared. Think about what you're going to write next. F equals, and then just replace that with an equals, and a k goes there. K over d squared. So basically we're saying the formula is going to look like this. F will be some amount divided by d squared. Just like before, we have to find out what k is by putting in the red section. D is 2 and F is 50. So put it in. 50 is k divided by 2 squared, which is k divided by 4. And if k divided by 4 is 50, then k will be 4 times 50, which is 200. So we've got a formula now, which is that F is 200 divided by d squared. We've got that k number, just like before. So now we can use that formula to work out F when we know what d squared is, or d is rather. So we've done that bit there. Here's the answer. B, find the force when the distance between the magnet and the metal object is 10. So when this is 10, what is that? So F is going to be 200 divided by 10 squared. 10 squared is 100, so 200 divided by 100 is 2 newtons. So question C says find the distance between the magnet and the metal object when the force is 8 newtons. So this time we know what the force is, and we have to work backwards and work out what the distance must have been. So here's our formula. F equals 200 divided by d squared. So this time we know that F is 8, and we've got to work out what d must be. So 8 equals 200 divided by d squared. That gets a mark. And then d squared must be 200 divided by 8. Just flip these around. We could multiply both sides by d squared and then divide both sides by 8, and we get d squared equals 200 divided by 8. 200 divided by 8 is 25. and wow, we've got a nice square number. So if d squared is 25, that's a mistake there. That should actually be 5. So if d squared is 25, d would be 5. Okay. Now, then it says, explain what happens to f when d is halved. Well, you could do it a couple of ways. One way is just to reason it out. If d is halved, that means you divide it by 2. Then when you square it, it will be quartered. If you divide it by 2 here, when you square it, you'll divide it by 4, because a half squared is a quarter. And then if d squared is divided by 4, then 1 over d squared will be 4 times bigger. If you make this 4 times smaller, then 1 divided by d squared will be 4 times bigger, because that's the way an inverse relationship works. If that doesn't make sense to you, not quite sure about that, go back to one of these things here. Now, it says, what happens to f when d is halved? Well, let's take an example. In the original example, you had that d is 2. Okay, and f was 50. So you know that when d is 2, f is 50, and that works out in this formula here. So, take that distance and halve it. Instead of having 2, make it 1. So now the force will be, instead of 200 divided by 2 squared, it will be 200 divided by 1 squared. 1 squared is 1. 200 divided by 1 is 200. So when distance is 2, the force is 50, but when distance is 1, the force is 200. Once again, you've halved the distance, but the force is increased 4 times. It's gone from 50 up to 200. So once again, you can do that with an example. So you can either reason it out or use an example, but either way, f becomes 4 times bigger. Question 6. A and b are positive numbers. A is inversely proportional to b. When a is 4, b is 36. Find the value of a when b equals a. So this looks a little bit different from the ones before, but it's still a proportion question. So let's imagine you're in an exam, you're not quite sure what to do. At the moment, you've got a blank bit of paper in front of you. Anything you do can't be worse than that blank piece of paper. Alright, so let's just start off and see how we get on, because sometimes with these questions you have a go and all of a sudden it starts to make sense. So let's start off with a is inversely proportional to b. That's what this rule says. We write it out. And in that case, a must be some number divided by b, just like we've done with the previous questions. Okay, just like the previous questions, we've got to work out what this number's got to be for this particular question. Well, we know that a is 4 and b is 36. So put those numbers in. A is 4 and b is 36. And work out what k must be. So, in that case, k would be 4 times 36, 144. So we've already got ourselves some marks. Okay, we might not be able to work out this bit yet, or even at all, but we've got some marks. Okay, so 144. So, next step, it says find the value of a when b equals a. Now let's just think about what that means. At the moment, a is 4 and b is 36. Now there's an inverse relationship. It means that as this becomes bigger, this becomes smaller. Now, if we kept on making this bigger and this came smaller, there'd be a point where these two things would be the same. Alright? So for example, if we doubled that to make 8, this would halve, and it would be 18. They're getting closer together. Okay? So what is the number when they're both the same? So what we say is, right, okay, if a is 144 divided by b, there's our formula. What we're basically saying, if a equals b, then write the same letter. If they're the same thing, write the same letter in this formula. Okay? So b is 144 divided by b. Basically what we're saying is this. Here's the formula to work out what a is. We start off with b, we divide 144 by b, but we get the same answer as b for a. They're the same thing. So b is 144 divided by b. Alright? So b squared, multiply both sides by b, is 144. b is the square root of 144, and b is 12. Okay? So can you see how that makes sense? If b was 12, then a would be 144 divided by 12, which is 12. So when they're 12, you get the same answer. C is directly proportional to the square root of y. Okay, we haven't done that before, but you still use this to write the rule out. C is proportional to the square root of y. It says directly proportional, so there's no 1 over, it's just proportional to the square root of y. Once again, just like before, you write C equals some number times the square root of y. That's what this means. If it's proportional to the square root of y, it just simply means that C is going to be some number multiplied by the square root of y. And we've got to find out what that number is. And we're going to do that, just like all these other questions, by putting in the numbers we've got here. So C is 12.8 and y is 16, a nice number that we can square root. So put the numbers in. 12.8 is k times the square root of 16. Square root of 16 is 4, so 12.8 is 4k. We're going to work out k by dividing both sides by 4, so we get k is 12.8 divided by 4, which is 3.2. So now we've got our formula. It was C equals k times the square root of y, but we've just worked out what k is. It's 3.2. So now we can write down C is 3.2 times the square root of y. And we can now use that to work out C when we know what y is, just like all the other questions. Okay, y is 400, so when y is 400, C will be 3.2 times the square root of 400, a nice square number. Square root of 400 is 20, so it's 3.2 times 20, which is 64. Done. So do you see how these questions are so similar? They've got these 3 stages each time. Okay, I hope this colour coding is helping for you, and I hope this video is working for you. It's the same steps each time. Question 8. The time taken, T, for passengers to be checked in for a flight is inversely, keyword, proportional to the square of the number of staff, S, working. So we've got 2 letters, T and S. So T is inversely proportional to the square of the number of staff working. So 1 over S squared, because it's inversely proportional to the square. So if it's square, it's S squared, inversely proportional 1 over S squared. Here's the key information. So T is K divided by S squared. We've got to work out what that K is, just like every other question we've done so far. Just like every other question, put the numbers in. T is 30 and S is 10. So 30 is k divided by 10 squared, which is k divided by 100, and so therefore k will be 30 times 100, which is 3000. So we've done A, find an equation connecting T and S. Okay, and here it is. T is 3000 divided by S squared, because it was k over S squared, and we've just done this part, just like all the other questions, and worked out what k is. So it's 3000 divided by S squared. Then it says, what is the minimum number of staff that must be working so that the time taken is under 60 minutes? So, find the number of staff when the time is 60 minutes. Okay, so get your time is 60 equals 3000 divided by S squared. We're going to have to work out what this is to make this answer 60. So, flip them around, you get S squared equals 3000 divided by 60. Alright? If you're not quite sure about that step, we just multiply both sides by S squared, and then we divided both sides by 60, and we get S squared equals 3000 divided by 60, which is 50. So, if S squared is 50, then S will be the square root of 50, which is 7.07. Now obviously you can't have 7.07 people. That's the number of people though, if you wanted it in exactly 60 minutes. Okay? So if you want less than 60, it's going to have to be more than 7. Alright? You'll need to have 8 staff to make it less than 60, because this relationship means the more staff you have, the less time it takes. So if you want the time to be lower than 60, then you will need more staff than 7.07. So you don't round down to 7, because that will make the time more than 60. You want the time less than 60, so you need more staff, so it will be 8. Even if you didn't do this bit, these stages, once again, you can pick up the marks. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 marks there. You can pick up most of those marks. Question 9. The number of days, D, to complete research is inversely proportional to the number of researchers R who are working. Once again, two letters D and R, and here's the relationship, inversely proportional. The research takes 125 days to complete if 16 people work on it. So D is inversely proportional to R. That's what this means. Okay? It didn't say square, so it's not R squared. Once as before, you change it and write D equals, to change that to an equal sign, K divided by R. That's all we mean when we're talking about inversely proportional. D will be some number divided by R, and we need to work out what that number is using this red information. Put in that D is 125, okay, 125 days, and put in that the number of researchers is 16 people, and use that to work out what K is. Just like before, K will be 16 times 125, which is 2000. So now we've got a formula that was K over R, but now it's 2000 over R, because we've just worked out what K is. So now we're going to use that formula. Find out how many people are needed to complete the research in 40 days. So this days is going to be 40. What must the R be? So get a mark for that, and then R will be 2000 divided by 40, which is 50. So you need 50 people to complete the research in 40 days. Last question. If you've got up to here so far, you've done really well. This question is really much a bit of an extension question. But why not have a go and see how many marks you can pick up, because it's all about picking up marks. We've got A is directly proportional to the square root of C, and W is inversely proportional to A cubed. When C is 49, A is 35. When A is 2, W is 16. Work out the value of W when C is 4. So we've got three letters this time, A, C, and W. Right? So A is proportional to C, or square root of C, and W is inversely proportional to A cubed. So it's like really having two questions in one. So let's just set it out and see if we can pick some marks up. So first of all, A is directly proportional to the square root of C. Okay, have a mark. Okay, and we've also know that W is inversely proportional to A cubed. 1 over, because it's inversely proportional to A cubed. Alright, have a mark for that. Then A will be some number times the square root of C. This is what this means. Have a mark. And W will be some number divided by A cubed. It's important to realise that this K here and this K here are going to be different numbers, because these are like two separate situations. Alright, it's just that we always use K in this situation. Okay, when C is 49, A is 35. So let's put that in. C is 49 and A is 35. So K times the square root of 49 is 7K. Have a mark. So K will be 35 divided by 7, which is 5. And so A is 5 times the square root of C. So here we had the situation. A was K times the square root of C. We've used this first part to work out that K is 5. So A is 5 times the square root of C. So we've already picked up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 marks if you've just done that. Now let's look at this one. It says when W is 16, A is 2. So 16 is K divided by 2 cubed, which is 8. So 16 is K divided by 8. In that case, K will be 16 times 8, which is 96. So the formula W is K divided by A cubed is actually now W is 96 divided by A cubed. So we've got like two separate questions for the time being. Then it says find the value of W when C is 4. Okay, so what that means is this. These letters A and C and W are linked because they both got A in common. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to put 4 here. We're going to use this formula to work out what A is. And then once we know what A is, we'll put it down here and we'll use it to work out what W is. So that's our plan. So C is 4, because it says C is 4 here. So a will be 5 times the square root of 4. Square root of 4 is 2. So a is 5 times 2, which is 10. Have a mark. Now get that 10 and put it here. So w will be 96 divided by a cubed, and a is 10. So it's 96 divided by 1000, which is 0.096. So even if you can't do all of it, you can pick up marks by doing steps. Alright? Just doing these blue bits. Look, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 marks just for doing that bit. It's really important you have a go. Okay, I hope this video has helped you, and I hope it's helped you to understand how similar these questions are and how the steps are the same each time. If you didn't understand it, what I recommend you do is look at the video once again, look at a particular question, don't write anything, and just watch what I do. Then turn off the video, turn off the screen, and you have a go at seeing if you can do that question from memory. Do it in your book. Alright? Then, once again, if you're not quite sure what to do, at any step, stop writing and watch the video once again. It will really help. If it still doesn't help, if you're still not sure about it, then at least copy down the answers into your book. Copy down everything that I've done into your book and ask me when you get back. Okay, look forward to seeing you next week. Cheers guys, bye.